Lowe's knows how to help you get the most out of your store run. That's why members save more with My Lowe's Rewards. Earn points towards My Lowe's money on eligible purchases. Get access to member-only deals and free member gifts. Plus, unlock free standard shipping when you reach Silver Key status. So what are you waiting for? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help. You save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free second look review. Second look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to DBR Bites, episode number 90. Jason Evans here for your listening enjoyment. I'm joined by Donald Wine. Donald, Duke wakes up today. We're fifth in the coaches poll. Tied for third. Tied. It takes a lot, considering how many voters there are. It takes a lot for a tie. Tied for third in the AP poll. I don't know. Not that any of this matters because the advanced metrics, the net ratings, all those other kind of things say, yeah, what are you talking about? This is still one of the top two teams in the sport. But I don't know. What are your feelings on that stuff really quick?
I was just saying before we got on, it's been a while since we've seen a tie in the top five of an AP poll. That, as you mentioned, with the number of voters and the number of points that you get for each vote is very hard these days to tie in the top. They usually have those down like at 23, 24, 25. So I was interested to see that. But it also just kind of says, it kind of reaffirms something I said before. Like, no one thinks that any team is really elite except for maybe Auburn, right? Auburn lost last week and didn't drop, but also it's because we lost, and they probably don't want to put Florida or Tennessee or Alabama above them. And it's funny because, until Saturday, the only team that had beaten it was us. And still every week they were getting all the first place votes because people kept saying clearly that they were the number one team, partly because of the SEC. So it's interesting how that has transpired, but also there's going to be a point, right? We kind of talked about this a couple weeks ago. There's going to be a point where the SEC kind of works itself out. They can't keep saying all these teams are the best teams in the country because eventually they're all playing each other, and then there's going to be some separation at some point.
Yeah, right. We are the lone team in the wilderness, so to speak, in the wilderness of SEC teams, because the rest of the top five is all SEC clubs. It's worth noting Auburn stayed number one in the AP poll. The coaches made Alabama number one. I actually think that if I was doing this stuff, I probably would have left Auburn at the top of the polls, and I can see putting Alabama ahead of Duke, whatever. If nothing else, it sets up a 1 versus 2 matchup this weekend. That'll be a lot of that's always fun and interesting. I think it's the first time in SEC history. I believe I saw the first time in SEC history that there will be a 1 versus 2 matchup among two SEC teams. It happens
That'd
to
be
the ACC.
interesting.
It used to happen to the ACC all the
I
time.
guess that makes sense. Yeah, they used to happen every week, right? Like
Right.
whoever Duke was playing would play somebody that was number 2 or vice versa, and it would, it'd just be that. This was back in like the 2000s,
No,
even
I remember. Hey,
2010s.
dude, I
Yeah,
remember in the 80s.
the 90s. Yeah,
In the 80s, there was a stretch of the season, I want to say in 86, my freshman year, where Duke, Georgia Tech, and North Carolina were 1, 2, and 3, and like they just traded places every week. It was kind of
right,
crazy.
right. Based on who played who. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it's worth noting, like, these polls don't actually matter all that much. I mean, teams will sometimes hang a banner, and legitimately so, for the AP regular season, before the NCAA tournament starts. If you're number one at the end of the regular season, I understand teams that honor that, and that is something to be accomplished.
and
To
we
say,
do that. Like we
yes,
have those banners.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. But aside from that, I don't know that there's a ton to take from it with all the other advanced metrics, with the NCAA net and the such. I don't feel like the polls are super, super important, but it's worth saying. I think that probably Duke's only chance to be the overall number one at the end of the year, number one in the polls, would be if we go undefeated from here on out, because those SEC teams get the benefit of playing in that super hard conference. Duke can't afford any other losses, in my opinion, if we want to claim to being the number one team in the regular season.
Now, the writers aren't in the room. They're not a part of the selection committee, but they are
Right.
clearly making their voices heard. And as you mentioned, that voice is an SEC team is going to trump us if all things are equal with regards to the record. Because if you look at the poll today, it's at least the AP poll was that Auburn's 1, Alabama's 2. We are tied with Florida for 3, and then Tennessee's at 5. Those other 4 teams that I mentioned outside of Duke all got first place votes this week. Duke got 0. So the fact
Yeah,
is they're
that's
thinking
telling.
that one of those teams is going to be the number 1 overall seed, or even a 2 seed, right? I'm sorry, not 2 seed, the number 2 overall seed, and Duke might be looking at that 3 or 4, depending on how the rest of the season plays out.
All right, before we get look, our purpose here, we've been distracted, as we often are, Donald.
Mm-hmm.
Our purpose here is ostensibly to talk about the Cal Bears, who come to Cameron this week on Wednesday. But before we get to them, I wanted to get to a little something that happened this week. The ACC has a coaches teleconference, a essentially a Zoom press conference with reporters from all over the country who follow ACC basketball. Used to be all over the South. Used to be all over the East, I should say. Now it's all over the country. In any event, Jon Scheyer was on that ACC teleconference this morning. I hopped on along with a bunch of other folks, and I got a chance to ask Jon a couple quick questions, and I thought his answer was very, very telling. What I wanted to get into was what happened against Clemson, specifically regarding Cooper Flagg. So many of us noted Cooper just did not seem to be himself for the vast, vast majority of that game. We've heard that he has been sick for a little while. Have a listen to what Jon said when I asked him about that.
Jon, on that same theme, Cooper Flagg honestly did not look well throughout much of that game. I saw him on the bench like at halftime, and he was barely even warming up. Can you talk about the flu, the virus, whatever it is that's infected the team, and specifically what it maybe did to Cooper in that game?
Yeah, Jason. I mean, Coop is he clearly was not himself in that game. Look, it's every team's game plan is to stop him, and so I think just the wear and tear of the season. He's been battling a sickness here for the last couple of weeks, not feeling fully himself. And so I think that's impacted the amount of preparation he can do on the court and everything. And then you have to give, of course, Clemson credit with the job they did on defense. But we have to get him, I have to get him, and we as a staff, our entire staff, we have to get him rejuvenated. We have to get him healthy, refreshed, and, back to being himself. And, obviously he willed us at the end of the game because he's such a competitor. But there's no question just somewhat worn down from the season, and we've put a lot on them. And so it's time we get them, like I said, rejuvenated and refreshed and ready to go.
So Donald, I thought Jon Scheyer was unusually frank. I don't know that there's any big surprise in hearing that Cooper's been really battling something for a couple weeks now. I don't know it's a huge surprise to then make the assumption that it's affected his preparation, his ability to participate in practice. You know, I, I don't know that any of that comes as a shock, but I think to hear Jon Scheyer talk about it, because it's the kind of thing that coaches usually they don't like to talk about a lot. To me, that was a little bit striking, and that says to me how serious this has been, not in terms of something lasting, but in terms of affecting Cooper being who Cooper can be.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily want to go so far as to speculate what he has and has not participated in. That's the one part that was kind of muddy in his response of what whether he's not practicing. It feels like he's practicing. It feels like he's doing all the things that all the other rest of the team is doing, but maybe for lack of a better word, a more lethargic pace because of the fact that he just doesn't have all of his, he's not 100% healthy. And, again, we talked about Mason Gillis, the fact that he has missed the last two games because of how sick he has been. And the fact that Jon Scheyer last week said it takes a Herculean thing for Mason Gillis to miss a practice, and he's missed two games and wanted to be a part of the team, but he was just so, ill that he couldn't make the trip. And so it's obviously something that's been affecting the team the whole season. We've had stories of people being sick basically since late November, right after that Kansas game. And it's the thing that the biggest adversity that we've kind of dealt with this season with regards to his health, right? Malik Brown's knee and everyone on the team having some sort of illness for the last 2 months. Those are the two things that really have to deal with. But I mean, you have to give them credit for toughing through it. You have to give them credit for going as hard as they possibly can. And despite the fact, we lost on Saturday, we've won all these games with him sick. And all these games where he was, and we almost won this game on Saturday, if not for a couple of details, right? And we won't have to get into them because we already did. So I'm hopeful that they can kick whatever sickness is ailing this team and get past that and hopefully be 100% for March. That's obviously the big deal. But in the meantime, these guys are going to have to fight through some things. And as, the sickness works its way through the team, we're going to have guys that are going to need to step up if other guys aren't ready to go.
Yeah, one of the things I almost wanted to ask Scheyer, look, I didn't, there were a lot of other reporters. There wasn't time for me to have a whole conversation with Jon Scheyer, but I almost wanted to say to him, hey, do you sort of maybe a little tiny bit regret scheduling that Illinois game when you could have had a bye week? Do these guys, with all the talk of sickness and the such, could a few days off maybe benefit your team?
Well, you know the answer to that because he already said, I hate bye weeks. And he mentioned that weight game where he first came on and said, I hated the fact that we had this week off because he wants to keep that continuity going. Again, their idea is if Mason Gillis is down, we need other guys to step up. If Cooper Flagg is under the weather and can't go be full Cooper Flagg, then we need other guys to step up to, again, assume some of those responsibilities. And for 2.5 months, right, they have been doing just that. And so we need to think about that in the grand scheme of things of, yes, this is something that has affected them. They have not used it as an excuse, and they're going to continue to battle. And this game tomorrow against the Cal Bears is going to be one where they're going to have to battle through some things to get the victory. And it may not be just the opponent. It may be whatever bug is ailing them at this point.
Yeah. All right. So with that, you have very, very nicely for us set up the conversation about Duke's game against the Cal Bears coming to Cameron on Wednesday. It's a late game time, unusually late for a Duke game in Cameron. It's worth noting that I spoke to Cal's head coach Mark Madsen today. In addition to Jon Scheyer, he was also on the ACC teleconference. I'm going to get to that in a second. But it's worth noting that he said that the team was literally about to leave to go to the airport to fly in. They are not flying in on Wednesday. They're flying in on Monday to come to Duke. So they want a lot of time to really prepare for this, for this trip to the East Coast. I mean, this is a part of their world now that they have to make these, trips cross country. In addition to playing Duke on Wednesday, they'll be playing at Georgia Tech on Saturday. And then they get back to the West Coast for another homestand. But Donald, before we get into everything they do, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about who they've played and how they've done against that schedule this year. It's not an impressive record, is it?
No, it is not. 12-12 in their first year, at least first year as ACC member. 5-8 in the conference. And Jason, they're right again. They're not terrible when it comes to the rest of college basketball, but they're kind of right in that middle of the KenPom. 126 in KenPom, 129 in the net. It's about as low as you want a team to go if they're in a Power Four conference. Obviously, the ACC has had some issues with the number next to their name in KenPom this season. But let's talk about what Cal has done so far. They have a couple of top 100 wins, one against USC early in the season, and then another one against Florida State. Other wins that are kind of, in the 100 to 200 range, you have UVA. They've beaten NC State twice. They've played them twice already this year and beaten them both times. And then Miami, which we don't have to discuss the Miami struggles, but Miami is still considered a top 200 team in KenPom. They obviously beat them, but it took overtime for them to do so. So that's something to think about. Their losses. They have some losses against some decent teams. Vanderbilt, Mizzou, very, very good teams. San Diego State, Pitt, Clemson, UNC, SMU. They have a couple that are kind of in the bad range, right? They lost to Cornell. Cornell's 131st in KenPom, and they did lose to Syracuse. Syracuse is 122nd in KenPom. So this team has struggled off and on. It starts with, I know we'll talk about some of the players later, but there was one player that was supposed to be a big part of their offense that got hurt early in the season and is not going to play the rest of the season. But at the end of the day, this team has just struggled against some of the teams that they probably should beat or at least contend with. And that's what's contributing to the fact that they're 12-12 right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you the thing that I noticed. You mentioned it. The fact that they've got a decent win, a couple decent wins, including that win over USC. That was an away game. USC, I'm not going to say USC is a great team, but USC is a fairly decent club. And to win that game on the road is impressive. It means that Cal has something that SMU, Florida State, Notre Dame, NC State, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and Miami don't have. They have a quad one win. That's something nice for them. And yeah, for, almost a third of the ACC, those teams don't have any quad one wins. So we know that Cal is capable of playing with good teams. And their results have not been great, but this is not a team that should be completely overlooked. And as I mentioned a second ago, I got a chance to talk to Mark Madsen very briefly on the ACC teleconference, and I asked him specifically, come into Cameron, like, what's the scenario? What does your team do that allows you guys to beat Duke? Have a listen to I asked him a couple questions. Have a listen to my conversation with the Cal head coach.
Mark, I want to ask you if there's anything that you were able to learn from watching the Clemson game, because not a lot of teams have had success against Duke. Are there things that you think you can replicate from that game?
As we've studied the film, you look to see the different schemes and ideas that each team has to slow down different players, to slow down a team, and you learn from each team. Obviously, Clemson played a tremendous game. And they did a lot of things really well. And so we study those films intensively, and we look at any possible way to slow down various players and to slow down a team in general.
And if I can follow up and ask if there's a scenario where you come out of this game in Cameron with a victory, describe it to me. Describe sort of, what happens right for Cal, what happens wrong for Duke to make that happen.
I think the biggest thing, as far as what happens wrong for Duke, I'm probably the wrong person to ask on that. But what would need to happen right for Cal? When we have great ball movement, we are unbelievable. When the ball's moving, when we're making the extra pass, when we're having the pass that leads to the assist, we've been very, very difficult to beat. We need to have tremendous one-on-one defense. That's been an area of growth. And again, there have been games where individually and collectively, our defense has been very strong. We had some lapses against Wake Forest. We had some mental lapses. We tried to gamble too much. Playing a team like Duke, if you gamble, they make you pay. If you lose sight of the ball, they make you pay. If you relax for a minute, they make you pay. And so we've got to be on alert, and we've got to be focused and locked in and not have those lapses. And we had a number of those in the Wake Forest game.
So, Donald, the really compelling thing to me as I look at the advanced stats on Cal is that Mark Madsen said we need to share the ball. We need to play good one-on-one defense. He's absolutely stressed that.
Can I say real quick? You
Go ahead.
mentioned those two things. That is a staple of what he did in college at Stanford. So the fact that he's the Cal head coach, first of all, we have to talk about that because you don't see that happen every day. That they crisscross. I think Mike Montgomery did it between NBA stops. But Mark Madsen, one of the great players at Stanford, now coaching across the Bay. And but again, this is the team that he has kind of operated in that style of what he did so well, both in college and the NBA. And he wants them to do that. But as we've seen so far, it has been a struggle for them to achieve all the successes that they're aiming for.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. It sort of changes the order of the things I'm going to talk about with Cal. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he said, "Oh, we're really good when we share the ball, when we move the ball around." On offense, Cal is 353rd in the country at assist percentage. So he's like, when we do this thing, we're great. And then you go, wait, you almost never do that thing.
So he's still right. They probably won the few times they've done it. But the idea is to make it where they continue to struggle in that area.
Yeah, I wasn't going to laugh at the man of course not. And total respect for him. But I think that's kind of amusing for a coach to be like, yeah, when we get assists, when we share the ball, that's when we're great. And then you look at their stats, and they're terrible at getting assists and sharing the ball. I just think that's amusing. Let's get into the advanced stats on them. As you mentioned, 126 in KenPom, 129 in the net. Not a very good team, especially on defense. They're ranked 204th on defense in KenPom. BC and Miami are the only other power conference teams, not just only other ACC teams, the only other power conference teams with a defensive rating worse than Cal. For Cal to be in the 200s on defense, like other power conference teams, you basically can't find other power conference teams other than Cal, BC, and Miami who are lower than 150 on defense. They are bad on defense for two reasons. The first one is they don't force turnovers. They're 284th in the country at defensive turnover percentage. And they don't defend the 3-point line. Opponents hit almost 37%. 36.7% from 3-point range against them. That makes them 328th in the country at 3-point field goal defense. Well, Donald, if you're not turning people over and you're letting people hit threes, newsflash, your defensive efficiency is going to be bad. Now, the one thing they do really well on defense is they don't let teams shoot a lot of threes. And that's really interesting. It's sort of a compelling juxtaposition.
I noted that as well. That's an interesting. We've talked so much lately about how teams are great at they limit the three and people are terrible when they shoot it, or they allow a lot of threes and people make them. This is the like kind of you taking the best of both worlds here. Like teams absolutely hit their threes, but they're not letting you shoot them. So you have to fight through that part.
Right. It's very, very interesting. They have the 8th lowest 3-point field goal rate on defense in the country. Only 32% of field goal attempts against Cal are 3-pointers. And as we've mentioned, Duke shoots threes like on about 45% of our possessions. And Cal limits teams to 32%. It is, Duke has shot 20 or more threes in every single game this year. 20 is our number. We've shot 20 plus every single game this year. If Cal is able to somehow limit Duke to like 15 or so threes, they're one of the teams in the country that looks like they could maybe do that. That would be a huge change in the way Duke plays offense, and it would be to some extent playing into Cal's hand in terms of what they do on defense. They, by the way, are also good at forcing you to create your own shot, at not allowing assists. Their opponent assist rate is top 25 in the country at just 43%. Donald, again, as you and I've mentioned many times, Duke's assist rate is around 60%. And when we had a poor assist rate against Clemson, that was a game that Duke lost. So I'd say like the two key battles, when Duke has the ball on offense, Cal's playing defense, is Duke able to get off a three? Because Cal's good at preventing you from taking threes. Is Duke able to get an assist? Because Cal is really good at preventing you from moving the ball around. I think those are two really compelling battles that'll happen in this game. On the other side of the ball, when Cal is on offense, they're very good at two things. They get to the free throw line and they grab offensive rebounds. They are 42nd in the country at free throw rate. And when they get to the line, they hit better than 75% from there. So, as a result, like that's the biggest part of their offense is getting free throws. It's kind of crazy. Even though they are just an average team at defensive rebounding, they are top 30 in the country at offensive rebounding. They grab almost 36% of their missed shots. Again, we saw this in the last game against Clemson. Duke struggled to rebound. We've seen it over the past few games. Now, Cal's not a great defensive rebounding team, but they're a very good offensive rebounding team. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how that plays out in this game. You would hope that Duke will get back to being the team they were earlier in the year when they were able to be dominant on the boards and not give Cal a lot of second shots. Now, in terms of the things they don't do well on offense, Cal, they miss a lot of shots. This is not a good shooting team. They hit just 31% on their threes, just 48.8% of their twos. Both of those among the bottom 100 in the land. And the other thing that jumps off the page is, like I said, the thing that Mark Madsen talked about, that they don't share the ball, that they have one of the 5 lowest assist rates in all of college basketball. So this is a team that's probably going to put the ball on the floor, try to create its own shot, try to get to the free throw line. It's not a team that is going to share the ball a lot, pass it around and force your defense to make some difficult decisions. Donald, anything else on the advanced metrics that you saw before we take a quick break?
Jason, what you were talking about the team missing a lot of shots but being decent at offensive rebounding really stuck out to me. Of course, they're going to get a lot of opportunities because they're missing a bunch of shots, right?
Exactly.
So, and everyone, right? You play pickup ball, I play pickup ball. Anyone from pickup ball, the high school ball, the college ball, and the pros knows that if you are on a team that misses a lot of shots, the idea is your teammates know exactly how your misses miss, and they're in good positions. Jason, if we were on a team after about 3 months, I'd know, okay, if Jason ever missed a shot, I know exactly where to be for his rebound because I know how it normally misses. The other team doesn't know that. And so you don't really scout that. You don't really look at that in video. So the idea that they're decent at offensive rebounding is a testament to the fact that they miss so many shots that they get these opportunities. They probably have learned where to be on the floor. So it's about positioning on every single miss. Duke has to make sure that they're in positioning. Kamen Malawach, Malik Brown, Con Knipple, Cooper Flagg, all those guys, and even Sion James and Tyrese Proctor on the outside. They need to be in good position that when a shot goes up, find somebody on the Cal team, put a body on them, and then go after the ball.
Yeah, I like that. And I got to tell you, you mentioned Kamen. I feel like Malawach has, his usage rate and his rebounds. He had a nice run in the middle of January, and it hasn't been the same for him lately. And I'm looking forward. I really hope that he gets back to being the player he was a little bit earlier in the year. Hey, Donald, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to talk about the Cal players. Their best player, the son of an NBA legend. A bit more on that in just a moment.
Pepsid Complete knows that food is one of the best parts of game day. That is, until heartburn strikes. Thankfully, just one chewable tablet of Pepsid Complete provides dual-action heartburn relief with an antacid that starts working instantly and an acid reducer that lasts all day. So you can stay focused on that second helping of chili without worrying about heartburn. All day based on 8-hour symptom relief studies during the day. Use product only as directed.
The rungs, we must write. The fights we must win. The future we must secure together for our nation. This is what's in front of us. This determines what's next for all of us. We are Marines. We were made for this.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
Romance is in the air for Valentine's Day. And when you're ready to pop the question, all you need is the perfect moment to come around. And, of course, the ring. At BlueNile.com, you can find thousands of natural and lab-grown diamonds, plus legendary service from Blue Nile's jewelry experts who can answer every question, help you design a custom ring, and even plan the proposal. So seize the day today. Right now, you can save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
We're so done with New Year, New You. This year, it's more you on Bumble. More of you shamelessly sending playlists, especially that one filled with show tunes. More of you finding Geminis because you know you always like them. More of you dating with intention because you know what you want. And you know what? We love that for you. Someone else will too. Be more you this year and find them on Bumble.
All right, we're back, Donald, on this latest edition of DBR Bites. We continue to discuss the Cal Bears, who are coming to Cameron. And as I mentioned before the break, the best player for the Cal Bears is Andrei Stojakovic. He is a 6'7" wing, and yes, you should recognize the name Stojakovic if you are someone who has been an NBA fan over the years. Go ahead. Yeah.
Peja.
Yeah. He is the son of Peja Stojakovic. A really, really good player with the Sacramento Kings a little while back. He was Peja Stojakovic, 3-time NBA All-Star. He had 1 year he averaged like 24 points per game. He was second-team All-NBA, made more than $100 million in his NBA career. So the family's probably doing fairly well. Andrei Stojakovic, really interesting recruiting story with him because Duke was interested. Duke, looked in on him. We gave him an offer. Never got to the point where he took a visit to Duke, but we were the in there for him. But he went ahead, big time recruit. The kid was a top 20 recruit. He ended up going to Stanford. And after 1 year at Stanford, he transferred to Cal. It's just like, how do you do that?
Crime going on in this team, man.
Oh, man. How do you transfer to your rival after 1 year? Wow. In any event, yes, he transferred to Cal, and he has been way better this year than he was in his 1 year at Stanford. He does everything for this team. He was, through like mid-January, from December through mid-January, he was close to 20 points per game for this club. And then he hurt his hip and missed a few games. And Donald, hip injuries, those are really bad because
they suck.
Yeah,
hip flexors to like the pointers. The pointers really hurt because I cannot tell you. You learn a lot about your body when your hip is hurt. Let's just put it that way.
I mean, you probably feel it with every damn step.
Everything. Your eyebrows. If you raise your eyebrows, your hip hurts. Like that. Like it is involved in everything. And again, you learn so much about how the hip bone connects to the body. In many, many ways.
Yeah, it sounds like you have some experience at this, my friend.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So he missed like 2 or 3 weeks. And the really interesting thing is when he came back, he just came back a week ago. He hasn't really been the exact same player since he came back. Like he wasn't shooting as much, and his scoring is way down. And he shot a bit more in the second game than he did in the first, but in the 2 games since he came back from this hip injury, he's just 6 of 25 from the field, just 1 of 9 on 3-pointers. And like I said, this is a guy who, when healthy, was averaging close to 20 points per game. He has a ton of gravity on offense. Everything runs through him. The ball is in his hands. Really good at putting the ball on the floor, drawing fouls. His field goal percentages are not good. Like, this is a high volume player, and the volume is not very efficient. He hits just 30% of his 3-pointers, but man, he's just firing up threes left and right. Takes a ton of shots. Doesn't hit, an outrageous number of them, but they need him to be creative. And he is the kind of guy that when he gets on a roll, he could cause real problems for you, and he can be very, very difficult to defend because he's got some decent size for, 6'7". He's got some decent size for a wing, and he's got some shimmy to his game. Much like his father, he's a good shooter who knows how to get open. Now, his running mate in the backcourt, or on the wing, I should say, is a real surprise. 6'1" freshman Jeremiah Wilkinson. This kid wasn't even a top 200 recruit coming out of high school. He played in Powder Springs, Georgia, a suburb of Atlanta, and it went all the way from Atlanta out to Cal. And this is a guy did not have a ton of big time offers. The SEC, there were a couple SEC schools on him, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and he committed to Mississippi State in January of his junior year, and then changed his mind in the start of the summer. Took a visit to Cal in August, and that's where he ended up going. But like his other offers, like Butler, New Orleans, Rice, Murray State, this is not a big time recruit, but he has been a big time player. When Cooper Flagg doesn't win ACC Rookie of the Week, you can kind of bet on Jeremiah Wilkinson. He's won it 2 or 3 times already. He had 30 points for them in an overtime win over Miami. He has multiple other 20-point games, including against Wake just a few days ago. Like Peja Stojakovic, he's the guy who puts his head down, drives to the basket kind of player. Not uncommon for him to get 8 or 10 free throws in a game. Shoots a lot of threes, doesn't make them. He and Andrei Stojakovic, similar kind of guys in that regard. Going to take a lot of shots from the perimeter, not make a lot of them. He's hitting just 29% on his 3-pointers, even though Jeremiah Wilkinson's taking about 6 3-pointers a game, only hitting 29%. I mentioned that Miami game. This is very instructive, I think. That Miami game, Donald, where he scored 30 points. Big number. In that game, he shot 12 2-point field goals, 10 3-point field goals, and 10 free throws. That is a guy who is, you put the ball in his hands, you stand back because he's getting up. He's getting it up. He's chucking. They got a couple other players I wanted to mention. Their front line. You got to talk about the front line anytime you're playing Duke, because Duke is so big, and Cooper Flagg is such a problem for teams, and Duke's size can be a problem on the inside. The guy who probably is going to be tasked with guarding Cooper Flagg is 6'7" Ritis Patrice. Patrice. I can't pronounce his last name. Patratus. I'm going to go with Patratus. Sure.
I guess Patratus.
Why not?
Yeah.
Patratus? Okay, cool. I can't pronounce that name. He came over to them from Air Force. Has a real nice knack. 6'7" guy, but has a nice knack for grabbing offensive rebounds, and as a result, getting fouled and getting to the free throw line. Not a high usage player, but he's willing to venture outside and take some threes. He's got some decent mobility on him. I mean, is Cooper going to be a tough matchup for him? Yes. Cooper's a tough matchup for everybody. But he's a decent defender. And this is not a huge Cal team. We mentioned that they're good at offensive rebounding, but I think that they're looking at Duke's size. The fact that they got a 6'7" guy who's going to have to be marking Cooper for the most part, it sort of tells you a little bit about some of the size that this team's bringing to the table. And then speaking of size, their big man, their man in the middle is Matty Sissoko. And folks should remember that name because he's a 5th-year senior, and his previous 4 years, he was at Michigan State. Duke played him a few times over the years. And he's someone you remember watching because he is a load.
Yes.
Dude,
yeah.
Dude is big on the inside.
He was the guy that, you're like, oh, okay. And he didn't always start for Tom Izzo, but when he came off the bench, you really would look over and be like, who was that checking into the game? Why is he not on the floor? He didn't score a lot of points, but he did all the dirty work. He did all the dirty work, and that's where he's dangerous.
Right. This is not a guy who gets a lot of... In fact, it's kind of amazing. He's almost invisible on offense. When he's on the floor, he only takes 10% of the shots. Basically, that means he's taking, he's getting a lob or he's putting back an offensive rebound. He is a good offensive rebounder. He's a decent rim protector. But yeah, he's just not someone they're not dumping the ball down to him in the post so he can operate, the way Victor Locken did against Clemson, operating in the post there. You will not see Matty Sissoko going one-on-one against man or anybody else down there in the post. But he's a presence on the inside, and he's part of the ability of this team to grab offensive rebounds, which is a huge part of their offensive effort. All right, Donald, give me a little bit on what are you looking for in terms of matchups?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and I kind of reemphasize this, is get back to the rebounding. The fact that we kind of have a 3-game streak of being out rebounded by teams is something that I want to put to bed very quickly. Keeping Cal off the glass, as we have discussed, is the key to making sure that they are not as efficient on offense. And yes, they're not efficient on offense, but it's because they're able to miss shots, get rebounds, and keep doing this until they score or go to the free throw line. If we limit the number of rebounds they get, we limit the number of shots they can take. So I'm hoping that we get back to our grind in regards to that, especially on the offensive end, because I think when we do miss some shots, we have an ability to get some second chance points against this team. Related to that, if we're not able to shoot the 3 as many times as we normally have, and you mentioned that magic number of 20, I think we'll get to 20. But it might be a chore to do so early on in the game. We need to be ready to be physical inside, and that's on offense and defense. Alter shots, getting blocks. This team is susceptible to getting blocked when they have the ball. And on offense, the thing that we have been missing lately is finishing through contact. And yes, we've had some games where we've been hacked and there's been no calls, but we now have to learn how to play through that. And so finishing through contact is something that I'd like to see us do more, because it takes a lot of pressure off of those guys shooting threes if we're able to finish in the lane, because that way the teams are either going to foul us or they're going to let us shoot those threes in an effort to stop us from coming inside, and that's where we're going to do a lot of damage. Finally, let our defense trigger the offense. I think against Clemson, we weren't able to do that as much, especially in the second half, and that's what allowed Clemson to get back into the game. If we can get back to having our defense be the staple and that trigger some of our offense, we're going to get some easy buckets, because we're going to get buckets in transition, or otherwise we're going to have it where Cal is going to be a position where they are not going to be set on their defense. And that's where we can exploit them. That's where we can get mismatches. And I think the fact that we can switch 1 to 5 on defense means that we should be in position to get some steals, or at least get it where they make bad decisions, take bad shots, and we can go the other way and punish them on the other end. So those are the 3 things I'm looking for. The great thing is, Jason, we're in Cameron. We get to go back to, we're on the road. We were on the road all last week, and now we're back in Cameron, friendly confines. The Cameron crazies are going to be out there. They're going to be ready to go. Our team should be as well.
So again, you and I, we don't like to talk down about any opponent. We treat them all with respect. But it's worth noting that Ken Pomeroy projects that Duke wins this game 85-60. You're going to see a Vegas line in the mid-20s. Duke's going to be favored by a very, very big number in this contest. And in fact, of every game left on Duke's schedule, this is the game where Duke is the biggest favorite in terms of percentages and all that other kind of stuff. We're basically at 99% to win this game, according to Ken Pomeroy's computers. I have a buddy I work with at the office at CNN, and he's a Cal grad, and he saw me chatting today with Mark Madsen, on this coach's Zoom. He walks by and he goes, "Hey, it's Mark Madsen." I was like, "You recognize Mark Madsen? Are you kidding me?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm a big Cal fan." And he and I were chatting a little bit about the game, and he goes, "So does Madsen think we have a chance?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course he's got to say that." And my friend goes, "I saw some computer thing that that Cal has a 1.3% chance of winning the game." And I went, "So you're telling me there's a chance?"
Yeah. And the thing, Jason, right, is you mentioned the Vegas line is probably going to be high. And that's true. And after a loss, I hope people don't look at that as much as people normally do, because this is the game where you shouldn't care if we win by 5 points or if we win by 50. We want to get back in the win column, get that confidence back. We've just talked about the fact that our guys are sick or otherwise battling ailments, and they need to get a full game of confidence underneath their belt to say, yes, against the team that we're supposed to beat, we go out there and we take care of business. We still got to do that last part, take care of business. So for the team, I hope that they're ready to go, and I hope they're ready to get back to business, because if they are, this will be a good game and a good win for Duke.
Yeah, so Donna, we just had a 16-game win streak broken. Do you know how many games there are left in the season? assuming Duke makes it to the ACC championship game, which is not, and perhaps if they make it all the way to the national championship game, there are 17 games left in the year.
So we're halfway through. We're a little more than halfway through, but we can start another game streak, is what you're saying.
Exactly. I am very much looking forward to the Blue Devils, after winning 16, saying, no. Up next, we do one better.
It starts
17 in a row.
It starts with one, and that one can come tomorrow.
You stole the words from my mouth, my good friend. With that, we'll leave it here on the latest edition of DBR Bites. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, you can write to us anytime. After the game, we want to get those headlines from you. dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe so this wonderful collection of thoughts and insights about the Duke basketball team hits your feed the moment it is available. He is Donald. I'm Jason. My thanks to the ACC for letting me chat with Jon Scheyer and Mark Madsen. And here's the Duke band playing us out, taking us back to Cameron.